Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is June 17th. I am not in my usual location, so I don't know what the weather's like, but I hope it's nice where everyone is. Announcements. Maybe the announcement is probably that 523 went to stable. I don't remember quite when that happened, so go 523. And
That was a while ago now, I think.
You're probably right. And it's a bit of a mess for the Sentinel-1 customers, so that's exciting.
They disable the table in order to avoid findings issues, false positives.
Sorry, what was that, Mike?
I followed this conversation. The Sentinel-1 is giving a false positive on one of the behaviors, right? Is that
yes.
the keychain file copy and open? And
yeah.
if that's the case, is there a workaround? Do you need to rebuild Osquery without the table, or can you just disable the table and config? Or
you can
for sure
disable
the table or just not
or
query
not
it.
Query it.
So if you don't query it, the Sentinel-1 doesn't complain.
Yeah, but this is the certificates
not
table.
Certain. It seems likely. I mean, I personally haven't seen it. We just have reports from customers. So I'm not certain when exactly it triggers.
Yeah, it'd be good to know. I mean, if it's just them, maybe they can have it just them workaround. Otherwise, I guess something has to change about the table again. I don't know.
I haven't heard of any issues with any other vendors. And we've had it out for a few weeks now, and I'm pretty sure off the top of my head that Fleet does automatically query that table because it wants to show an inventory of certs on a device. So I think if there were like an issue with CrowdStrike or something like that, we would have seen it like pretty immediately from our side.
Yeah, what Zach said. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. Next section is questions, issues, PRs people want to discuss. Meant a bit as an open section for discussion.
Steph, you and I have some PRs to merge, and I'd love to get this patch release out. I think there's a simple fix for your PR that has a build issue. I approved one of yours, and I am about to push another PR that's relatively simple. Would love to get all those merged and then get the patch.
I don't think any of my PRs are things I have deep opinions or ownership vibes for. I think all of the things that I have open are probably Claude generated security fixes.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them I've read and agree with, but like if you just want to merge anything, like
sure, I can merge the 8934 that I approved. The other one is like it needs I think just an include change to fix the test build. But if I push that, then you have to approve it, I think, or maybe neither of us can approve it.
Let me take a look at which one you're
probably
talking
easiest
about.
If you just do it. That's 8923,
okay.
I believe.
So 8934, we think we can just merge. You gave that one.
Yeah, I'll merge it if you want, or you can merge it.
I just went over there, so
okay.
I'll just squash that thing. Okay, and you were saying 8923.
8923. Yes, the build fails, and I tried out the Copilot fix it button, which opened a whole nother PR and it's a little bit silly. But I think that the difference basically is it just adds an include for.
Is it a
Osquery util system env.h?
Is that fix targeting my branch?
No, it doesn't. It's silly. It's silly. I linked it though.
That's a bummer.
It was like the UX did not work well of the Copilot thing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I can try and do that after this meeting. Yeah, I think I can't do that this minute, but I can try and do that after this meeting. What
is definitely
other?
not necessary. I'm about to put up another, which is for the file carving issue. And I think once we get all of those, then I'll just cherry pick them all into a patch, and we can push that to, you know, so our sort of edge and then stable quickly, I would think.
I'm wondering if we want to do that as a patch or if we want to cut a release.
Personally, I'd rather see it as a patch so that it can go to stable quicker.
But can it? I mean,
I think it should, if we're only changing a few little things and we QA those specifically.
Well, I'm looking at just what have we done since 5.23.
Oh, I merged like major build system changes and stuff.
Yeah,
we were gonna do. Remember we talked about this?
Yeah, no, I see
the
1.30. I see the toolchain thing merged.
And we were gonna do a major version release associated with like the big tool chain changes, and then we talked about like doing a patch. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to deal with cherry picks,
I don't mind. I'm happy to do it. I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Do we have other things we want to get in there? Like, I know there's a bunch of other still classified security reports. Almost none of these feel like panic level reports to me. Like, we should fix them all, but I don't know. I don't know. What's your sense on those?
Yeah, I mean, generally agreed. Like, we should fix them, but I'm not panicked. I don't want to let them just sit in like release limbo for a while though. And I did get GitHub to issue CVEs for 3 of them. I think that getting that release out and the CVEs out will be good. I don't think that any of them are worth panicking about, but definitely good to fix.
Okay, and you thought they merited CVEs? I didn't think hard about any of this, so I'm happy to defer to you.
I didn't think super hard, but they all looked to me like they could merit CVEs.
Sure. So much noise.
There was one that I thought it was like so rarely possible to trigger, and so probably unlikely that it can actually be exploited, that I didn't have a CVE issued. But there were a couple of there was the file carving one that was clear how it could be exploited. That one I think definitely merited a CVE. And then there were another 2 that were just sort of like clear, out of bounds rights, that it wasn't exactly clear how they could be exploited, but like a simple out of bounds right seems like it could be.
The file carving one felt like a reach to me, like, because you have to have known what someone was going to file carve, and then in advance symlink that into a private file, and then fish the data out of the temporary directory. So like it's doable for sure, but it's not it's not as bad as some of the things we've seen go by us. So
yeah, I mean, for sure, it's not like it's not crazy. But yeah, I got CVEs issued for those 3. I think we'll get the patches out. They're all pretty simple patches, and that'll be good.
I'm good with that. Thank you for doing all that legwork. I feel like we talked a little bit about it, but just the GitHub process here feels absolutely terrible.
Yeah, the GitHub is pain for sure.
And I think part of what I concluded is that we should probably just be doing PRs out in the open. I might feel differently if we ever saw something that was remotely exploitable, but I think our security model generally makes that real rare. So
yeah,
the pain of the GitHub thing pushes me towards just being like, I guess we'll just make the PRs public, because like, how bad is it really?
Yeah.
So, Mike, if you disagree, or Stefano, or Philip, feel free to say something. But
people will have to be more responsive when it comes to updating everything, and they're going to have to get used to it. I don't know. We're having to get used to it. Everyone's going to have to get used to it as they get security fixes more frequently than in the past.
I think that there's this other like fundamental issue where our code's open source, so like we're gonna put out code that has security fixes in it, publicly readable.
Yeah.
You know, if there was something really bad, I could imagine embargoing an entire, patch and just being like, okay, version 5.25 is secret for a week after it goes stable, but we're not there, so it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is like, I would like to minimize the time from when like you can see what the patch is to when the release is called stable, so that your average user has the best opportunity to just be able to push out a stable release.
Yeah.
And maybe these days your average user is using Collide or Fleet, and so it's a matter and using those I see shaking head.
We know that Mike's employer has a very large internal deployment. We know that Microsoft has shipped Osquery. We know that CrowdStrike has shipped it. We know that Jump Cloud ships it. We know that Okta ships it. I think Collide and Fleet are maybe the most active on our calls usually, but certainly probably
maybe it's
smaller
drop
than...
in the bucket. But I guess there's like only so much we could do for each of those, and hopefully like publishing CVEs makes it more clear to those folks that they need to update as well. I mean, we've got Mike on the call. I don't think there's an issue there.
No, that large employer is certainly familiar. I'm willing to assume that Okta and Jump Cloud and Microsoft are all tracking, and Elasticache, right? They're probably tracking pretty closely. So, yeah, it's very weird.
But I think that they are again. But for all of those consumers, basically, I still think that the best thing is as quickly as possible going from like releasing the code that informs what the issue is to having the stable release, because that is hopefully when any vendor is willing to push it out.
That's a good goal. Okay. Is there anything else about that we want to talk about?
I don't think so. I'm happy to move on the agenda for BSD.
Okay. There's a bunch of items that I've kind of been carrying forward for a few weeks, just because I feel like we haven't had a chance to talk about them, and we could decide they don't really matter or whatnot. So we have this big FreeBSD PR, which does a bunch of stuff that we're not really sure we want. Maybe the most notable one is the shift from static builds to using OS shipped dependencies. And I don't know what we think of that. Zach, do you,
my inclination around this was like, so far what we saw from this person was they're like, I'm not even taking a look at the CLA. I'm not even willing to consider it. So I feel like we might just want to say, like, if you're not willing to look at the CLA, you should just publish a fork of Osquery that people can use to build FreeBSD if they want to. And if you do want to pursue this, getting this merged, like, one, the CLA has to be done. We're not going to do any further technical discussion until we know that's possible. And then two, we're going to have to figure out how to sort of make this make sense for FreeBSD while also minimizing how things are changed for the existing build.
I think,
but I have a feeling that, like, based on what they said so far, they're just going to be like, okay, well, fuck you, and we'll be like, okay, well, like, please publish it as a fork because probably some people want this.
I feel like the question to us is probably more about, like, what is our stance on static versus dynamic packages, and I wonder if, like, you maybe were part of the original decision on that.
I mean, Stefano and Alessandro, I think, probably have the best context on that.
Really? I thought it predates Trail of Bits involvement.
To be honest, I don't remember super well.
It does. From my, let's say, experience and knowledge, well, the reason is that, first of all, control, or mainly control, if you want, so that, okay, two things, control and also compatibility. Control in the sense that when you develop Osquery, you know which third-party libraries and version you're using, you know which interfaces you're working against, and you know how the libraries behave. Because again, the version is fixed. You test that version. If you are using dynamic libraries, then first of all, you are not sure which version you will find on the specific OS, and so the packager has to maybe do some changes in Osquery, and so basically the user will not have the same version or the same implementation, let's say, of Osquery, and they will maybe have issues that are all different from what we are working on in upstream with what we are testing. So this kind of adds additional work to the developer side to not only keep track of the version or the distribution we are using to test things, but also all the other distribution that the users are using Osquery on, and all the versions of third-party libraries that Osquery is being used to run. The other thing is compatibility, in the sense that, or legacy distro support, in the sense that older distributions that are not anymore updated or simply don't have up-to-date third-party libraries can still work with actually a more up-to-date version of third-party libraries. So again, if you take, I don't know, a CentOS 6 or a CentOS, well, yeah, CentOS 6 or CentOS 7 distribution, you have, and you ship Osquery as a static binary, the libraries we are using are newer than what you can find on the distribution. Now, obviously, the issue is that this works if you have enough manpower. Like, if you have enough manpower to keep the third-party libraries up to date. But the concern is that actually it eventually requires more manpower to handle the bugs that will come up with instead using dynamic libraries, shared libraries, due to all those different versions of third-party libraries. As security-wise, otherwise security-wise, it is true that technically the shared libraries can be more updated or than what we ship. But again, it depends on the distribution. If you are on a supported and up-to-date distribution, yes. Otherwise, not really.
So
I mean,
this topic came up in the governance council that we have with several Linux kernel developers. The view that they had, and this is something they've actually been wanting me to bring to this group and raise as a main query, of moving from, ideally allowing dynamic linking, because then Osquery can be added into the distros, to the distros package manager. So Ubuntu would be able to publish a Osquery package and maintain whatever patches may need to be made, ideally small patches, to resolve issues with the given versions that they have on Ubuntu. It would allow Debian to package, etc. I think there is a trade-off between how much we control it and therefore the support is simplified, but also will the distros and people who want it from the distro be willing to contribute more if it's dynamically linked? And how can, and would it speed up would it reduce the amount of maintenance if static libraries aren't necessarily needed to be kept? But one of the things that they raised was, instead of just assuming, instead of pushing for move to dynamic libraries, or dynamic linking, instead, why not allow both? If static linking is what Osquery wants to publish as their main images, or as their main version of Osquery, do static linking, but have it where it can be built to use dynamic linking, and leave it up to the distros if they want to do that, and then include it in that kind of thing. So it's
to make sure I'm following there, I think that you're not saying that the same binary would be able to do both. You're saying that we would like amend the build system in a way to allow building a different binary. Maybe even we would publish that one that uses dynamic
specifically
linking.
The building pipeline, whatever process y'all have for building, or whatever process Osquery has for building, there would be a mechanism to say build this dynamically, or a mechanism to say build it with static dependencies, and all the static dependency and the main build pipeline that Osquery runs itself would just do the static linking ones. You could do dynamic if you want, but if from their standpoint, Osquery wants a known version of Osquery. It always works the same way. It's reliable in the versions. You can then tell somebody, hey, you're using your distro's Osquery, and you're running into all these issues. Can you try downloading Osquery from our upstream, run that one, and see if it works? Could help.
Maybe it's a bit controversial here, but I think I would want to ask, what is the problem that they are trying to solve specifically? If it's just for, let's say, having a clean build, and I'm using air quotes here, that has dynamic libraries via packages, or if there is actually a specific problem. And the reason I'm asking is because back then, when Stefan and I and Cherubits looked into this, there were other things that we reasoned about. Like once you, first, once you start supporting distributions, then if you have dynamic linking, you have to consider which ones have priority. Because once you have different windows of ranges of versions, then you will have some distributions that work fine, others that do not because the version is different and the API has changed. And we still support CentOS 6, for example. I know that it is technically deprecated.
I think we dropped 6.
Yeah,
I think 7 is our minimum.
Yeah, it is officially deprecated, but we still have some bindings there that can work for certain features. The oldest one is CentOS 7 right now. Maybe Ubuntu 14. Did we also update Arch Linux? Sorry, Arch 64. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you start having different versions, how do you decide which ones take priority? And also, once you start supporting this, you will open the floodgates for bug reports that are distribution specific. My opinion right now is that we now have less work upstream because we only deal with bug reports that do in fact apply to us always, all the time, and that they cannot depend on how the version that is on the specific distro has been compiled. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like we always, every couple of years maybe, or months, go back to talking about dynamic dependencies. Last time it was Arch Linux. And I don't know, my question is, I can see some of these distributions adding additional work for the distribution itself, packaging libraries that are not otherwise used by anyone else in the system repository just to build Osquery.
Do we have some software used in Osquery that would need to be built for something like Ubuntu or Fedora, widely used ones?
What I meant is that I've seen, I think it was Arch Linux, they had some libraries that were not originally there in the system repositories, but they have been added specifically so that they could build Osquery. I don't know. I feel like I can understand wanting a, let's say, clean build, not build, but deployment process where everything is packaged correctly. But for something that is like Osquery, where the main principle, the main guideline, which is, I think, the one we have to look into first before we decide whether we want to change this or not, is that Osquery must be able to download it and throw on any host, and it should just work. And this will eventually clash with dynamic dependencies as we start making the build more and more complex by adding several if-def based on the specific version, on that specific distribution, and on that specific architecture.
So let me nose at that for a minute, because Arch did this, right? Arch actually maintains a dynamically built Osquery, unless they dropped it. So from one perspective, there is absolutely nothing stopping a motivated Ubuntu maintainer from maintaining an Osquery that is built dynamically. We don't distribute that, but like Arch maintains a set of patches, or at least did a little while ago. But the other thing that I can't remember is when Alessandro designed the current build dependency system, Alessandro and Stefano, I don't know, some mix of you two, right? There is some amount of overlay capable for like, where does this dependency come from? So what I wonder is like, if we really wanted to make it easier for distributions, is it, is there a little bit of, can we smooth that over and give them a little bit more rope and be like, look, here's the rope, you maintain your own damn patch set. But
yeah, I mean, my thought is also sort of like, if there are really distros who want to do this and like, they have technical challenges, I'd love to talk with them and try to negotiate solutions with them, like if it's really happening. But I guess I don't want to spend too much time digging into this on like the hope that maybe they would do that.
I think that's fair, and maybe I'll repeat that with slightly different words, right? Arch had a maintainer that wanted to package Osquery for Arch, showed up and was like, hi, y'alls, I got patches. What can we do to make this go, right? And we engaged with him, maybe not the best way, but like, Arch maintains this. This is very different than what we saw with the FreeBSD person, which was kind of like my office wants me to do this and I'm on a weird operating system, so I'm going to fling some code over the wall. Please take it. Goodbye now. Right. So Philip, if you're in discussion with developers who are actually interested in packaging Osquery for distributions and willing to put work in, then I think maybe the conversation worth having is like, yeah, we're willing to talk to them like we did with the Arch people. Like, go look at what they did. And
bring them into this meeting or a different one?
Yeah, I mean, I think into this meeting potentially, and then if we need to schedule some dedicated time, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, definitely, we're always interested in talking to anyone. I guess my perception of this FreeBSD thing is like, this person doesn't look like they're wanting to be very collaborative here, and that's going to be an issue for us. Like, because they're like, I won't even look at the CLA. How are we supposed to get started with that? But if there are people who want to get involved and there are technical issues or whatever, like, this meeting is open for everyone. And if they want to come and bring those things, like, I think from my perspective, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree, like, we'll definitely talk with them, understand what their concerns are, explain what our concerns are, and in good faith, try to negotiate something that can work for everyone.
So would a good starting point be if there's a specific item that some of the developers wanting to do this see is missing, that by Osquery agreeing to implement or us contributing, open an issue on the item and start with that? Like, if the build process right now has no way to do, it exposes no mechanism to do dynamic. Because I do know we've got one person who built their own package of Osquery and had to remove a bunch of stuff. I think it was Thiago. I'll take a look at what he did, but he did have several patches he had to make. And I recall him mentioning some of the, use system libraries where possible, disable submodule fetching, remove include of non-existing header, fix remaining compilation. So this was, what distro was this for? What distro did he do this on?
But I mean, the question there is like, what motivated him, right? And he doesn't have to answer, and you don't have to answer for him, right? But a lot of the people I know who are like, oh, I really want this packaged with dynamic libraries so it fits in my ecosystem, are coming at it from an almost religious point of view, right? They're not actually interested in the pragmatic. Well, it runs, so if you really want like a DPKG, you could just get it and build your own, or like use ours, right? They're coming at it from a very moral standpoint of like, heaven forbid I have a statically linked library on my system because it offends my sensibilities. So there's some degree of, I mean, you're making work for yourself.
I mean, so there's a trade-off, but again, dynamic libraries, shared libraries, unsupported distributions are right now, you can say, more up to date regarding what CVEs have been found in our third-party library. So again, there's the security point of view. Those libraries are updated more frequently than currently what we can.
But I'm actually,
yeah,
I'm not convinced that's a credible argument, right? Because the value add there is not that the library has been updated, it's that the library has been updated, which means that any package that uses it and has not evaluated the risk directly is there. So, you know, there's a lot of assumptions baked into that value statement, and it's not clear to me that they hold. But I also understand why people would like it to be true, so I don't want to condemn it or anything. It's just, I think, much more nuanced than people make it out to be. You know, for example, Apple, right, ships incredibly out-of-date software on my machine, but if there's a real issue, they're just going to patch it, right? So there's a perpetual problem where people are like, whoa, your curl version is out of date. And you're like, nah, Apple ships this, it's fine, right? So it feels very similar in a way where like distributions and software packages have to sort of evaluate and make changes. And when we try and make these kind of base pronouncements about like, oh, everyone is more secure if you use the most recent thing, it's like, not entirely. So I can appreciate it, but I think it's an oversimplification.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I was going to mention, we could maybe start with adding some hooks into the CMake so that it can fork into standard find packages, ignoring our submodules. And then it is up to whoever is going to build on the other side on distributions to provide something on the shape that Osquery expects for third-party libraries, and that could be a starting point, maybe.
Yeah, I could imagine a world where, like, I don't know what this really looks like, but, you know, there's some default list of, like, this library comes out of this submodule or this link argument or whatever, and then, you know, distro has to build effectively their own build instructions or their own environment file. I don't know what that looks like, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Oh, I see that Stefano is typing, but I was gonna ask for his opinion next. So you can talk if you.
No, yeah, it was more of a question. I think, isn't it already possible? Like, first of all, we are just searching for files called find, like the correct. So for files that are like the find.cmake files, if you can substitute those with your normal find package that you would have to write. Like, sure, maybe it won't use the one that are already ready and present in the system because CMake is installing them. But I think also setting this, I think the CMake extra modules maybe should help find those instead of our internal ones. But yeah, I agree.
It is kind of supported maybe, and you can hack into it maybe. Yes, you make variables and so on. But yeah, I was proposing to make this like public interface or something and maybe make it nicer.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I guess what I sort of gather from all of this is it would be possible to make the build system allow doing this kind of thing. It would take some work. I would prefer to continue discussing and or doing that work at the time when someone has a real project that they're, you know, serious enough about that they'll come talk to us. Like hopefully to you, Philip, that doesn't sound dismissive. That sounds actually like,
no, that's
let's
fair.
bring those people in. And then hopefully to them, it sounds like, oh, there is a real possibility enough to motivate them to actually do it if they really actually care about it. I think to Steph's point, versus just that, people do have philosophical issues, but does that motivate them enough to actually do the work?
Yeah. So one of our kernel devs does have 13 patches he's built for whatever distro he's doing this on. I'm trying to find which distro he's on. And he said he's got it functional, but he doesn't have it where he's ready to submit anything upstream to adjust it. It needs some work for that. So I think he is actively interested in it. I know some things that he did mention were like compile time options. For instance, DPKG, I believe, is required on all distros, regardless of whether or not the distro would ever have DPKGs. And so that kind of stuff is what he's looking at. I've sent him a message. That's what I was typing up on the side, to let him know kind of what we've discussed in this, and we'll come and probably start with you, Zach, and then figure out what things to submit as issues in the OS query.
Yeah, and like the
actually,
the DPKG library thing is probably like, we ship one binary for all the Linux distros.
Yes.
We don't want to start shipping a bunch.
No, actually, I think there's a little bit more, because one of the things that we've looked at is, if you look at, I don't remember if this is so much true for RPM directly, for DPKG, but you can put RPMs on distros that do not natively support RPMs. So Osquery is a general piece of security telemetry information. Like, I don't know that as a project, we want to a priori say, oh, we don't collect RPM information unless you're on a Red Hat derived operating system, because it would be weird.
You could install an RPM on Ubuntu if you want,
or on macOS. So there are these weird edge cases like that, and I think that as a project, we don't want to do that. If a entity, be it a distro or a company or someone else, is repackaging Osquery, they can absolutely rip out whatever tables they want to rip out, and maybe we want to sort of say like, oh, the build should make it easier to rip out some tables like that. I'd say okay to that, right? But I feel more strongly about.
I'm in agreement with that as well.
That's fair.
I think it's fine if someone wants to, build their own custom version of Osquery. We're an open source project; they can do that. I think if there are things that they can do that are, or that we can collaborate with them to do to make it easier for them to do what they want with Osquery, that doesn't make our lives, substantially more complicated, then I think we could do that. Or I'm open to looking at doing that. So, but then, yeah, like there are reasons, some of these things, like there are reasons why there's such an extensive set of dependencies and what's included.
Yeah, Alessandro points out in chat that there's an additional sort of thing where if your tables vary across your Linux platforms, then you also have to start varying your queries, because that means that there isn't a simple Linux queries. So there are some workarounds for that, but I don't think we support any at a project level.
Sorry, I asked a very stupid question. I mean, Collide and Fleet do support discovery queries, but I was wondering if it is built into the fabric of the product that some document, you have version X, but some tables are not there.
So inside Collide, we do an awful lot of what Osquery versions can support what queries. And mostly this actually doesn't come up because we keep all the devices at like a pretty recent thing. So like occasionally we're like, oh yeah, don't use this table unless the Osquery version is at a minimum of X. But the other thing that we do, and this comes up more for cross-platform things, is we create temp tables with matching schemas sometimes, and that lets us have a consistent piece of SQL that could union across Windows and Mac OS, for example. So you can kind of start a transaction, create a temp table, run a SQL query that uses whatever, and then close it out. And because of the way the SQLite implementation works, creating a temp table, create temp table if not exists will do nothing if Osquery has the table, and will create an empty dummy record if it does. So it feels a little bit like a happy accident to me.
Nice.
Zach, I don't know if Fleet does anything in this space, but
I mean, Fleet supports sort of both internally with things, with data that we're collecting automatically. There are ways that Fleet says, you know, does this table exist, or things related to that. And then with the things that a user can just customize directly, we also support things like, you know, effectively discovery queries.
I was wondering if Philip could maybe provide some. Like, I feel like Osquery is really cool, but without something like Collide and Fleet, it's really hard to have like a production environment. And I was wondering if how are they using Osquery? Because I can see several hurdles if you were to just use pure Osquery with such a diverse set of binaries, but with different libraries, with tables that may not be there, based on, like, you're basically a mix of whatever distribution X is deploying right now, with and without tables, and without something like Fleet and Collide in front of it. It seems like it is really, really hard to use in a realistic production environment.
Yeah, so we do use Fleet today. We've looked at Collide, we've looked at a variety of products that can integrate with Osquery or use Osquery under the hood. I definitely agree with you that, you know, without those, it's kind of hard to productionalize them without one of the many orchestrator tools. We do have, you know, I think somebody mentioned it's almost like a religious level of how you want packages done. It's definitely partially that. A lot of it does come down to like trust and testing, and they know the maintainers of the distros, they know the processes that go into it, they have high trust of that versus generally commercial type things. But that being said, you know, the other day I was looking at something, you know, I was testing something related to a Fleet thing that we're doing, and I went, oh, you know, I bet I can just run this OS query locally on the host via my onboarding tool, and it'll spit out the answer that I want, and I can just parse that, you know, I can read it as JSON, and then I can go forward with it. And then I discovered I don't have any way to just do a one-off SQL query with Osquery, and went, oh, I can't do this. Hold on a sec. I was using Orbit. I'm not sure if Orbit exposes it. So if Osquery has it, I'm not sure if Orbit exposes it. But it was something. Yes, it is one of the items that I'm concerned about. I think if Osquery wanted to allow distros to maintain their own packages of Osquery with dynamic linking, one of the many items that would probably have to be done is to generate fake tables if the table doesn't exist. So for instance, if somebody says no include DPKG for a given query, then it doesn't build it, but it instead generates a false table. But that goes to the whole thing that Seth brought up, which is a great point. Osquery is a security tool. Should we be allowing the removal of tables like that? Because you're right, somebody can install a dev or an RPM on a Mac. It's not, you're going to run into issues, but you can.
Yeah. I have to drop. So I'm going to stop taking notes. Y'all are welcome to keep typing notes into the agenda doc here, or keep talking amongst yourselves, but I have a meeting in 6 minutes. So
yeah, I mean, I think I'd be interested in wrapping it up unless someone here has something that they want to get to urgently. I mean, hopefully Philip, like, it's clear that like we're open to discussion.
Yeah, we're very good at contributing upstream. We have tons of people that do it. We have an entire group that's dedicated to handling that. So we'll come in and I'll discuss with Thiago, and we'll figure out what to start with and what the main first asks would be, so that we can start to do that. But this does give additional insight, and what I'll do is I'll send them the recording of this for them to watch and basically, you know, get an idea of where it is. So
awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. I mean, Seth, feel free to drop. Did anyone else have something else pressing that you want to get to in our last few minutes here? Yeah. Okay, cool. I think I'll hit the stop recording button then, and we'll be back in 2 weeks as usual. And yeah, Philip, if you want to have further discussions around this, like perhaps in the core channel on Osquery Slack would be a good place for that.
okay.
Or just bring, file issues. If you do that, though, I think definitely mention it. Definitely mention it in Slack, because I might not see an issue without that. And yeah, you can also just bring the person to the office hours, and the agenda. I don't know if you've noticed, but the agenda for these is editable by anyone who logs in with GitHub. So you can add this topic to the agenda, or if someone's joining, they can add it. Cool.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Hitting stop.